Good afternoon and welcome to IAB There, our weekly live stream in which we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. I'm Cheryl Goldstein, EVP Chief Industry Growth Officer at IAB. Today we're going to take a look at the ongoing problem around the talent crunch. We saw the Great Resignation over the past 2 years, where people were forced to make hard work-life balance decisions, especially women, and particularly single moms who were expected to work like they don't have children and raise children like they don't work. And they pretty much disappeared in large numbers from the corporate world, setting us back about 10 years worth of progress. So where have all these women gone? Well, it turns out many of them are doing it for themselves. So to help us understand this workforce dynamic, please welcome Kristen Standish, the founder and CEO of Razor, Colleen Aegis, CEO and founder, Anecdote Liquors, and Laura Lassiter, CEO of the Strategy Source. Welcome to the screen, everybody. And I'm going to remind you to unmute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love panels that are all women because we get into so much fun, juicy conversation. Always, it always ends up that way. So first, what I want to do is just have each one of you just start with what you're doing today. And then we're going to go back to talk about what led you to starting this business. Colleen, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, Cheryl. Thank you so much. So I run Anecdote Liquors here out of Massachusetts at the moment. We're just starting to expand into a few new states, and we make a product called Velo Vodka, which is a super premium vodka, new to the market and kind of geared towards like the innovation, smart, sexy consumer for vodka.
Awesome. Kristen, how about you?
Hey, how are you? I am Kristen Standish. I'm the founder of Raise Her Collaborative, which is a private member community, peer group really, aimed at keeping women connected, both socially, professionally, and intellectually through curated content. That is the passion side of the project, and the keeping the lights on, paying the bills. We run an agency aimed at mission-driven brands and helping them scale e-commerce brands and marketing.
Fantastic. And Laura, tell us about what you're doing.
Hi, Cheryl, it's great to see you and nice to meet both you, Colleen, and Kristen. Very fun. I am CEO of Strategy Source, and we are a talent advisory executive search company within the digital media space and ad technology, which is how I know most of the people within the IAB, et cetera. And thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to hear your take on what companies need to be doing to help solve for this issue, but we'll get there. Why don't we talk a little bit? You're all entrepreneurs, you all went on your own, but that always hasn't been the case, right? You've all worked in other companies, did maybe the corporate thing. What prompted you to start the business that you're in today? Colleen, why don't we start again with you? I'm actually curious how you started Liquor Brand.
Sure. So I spent 20 years in banking. It was a great career, but very lucrative also, but just was never really passionate for me, like a passionate thing. So basically I was at brunch with my children and we ran into a waitress that was kind of a bit of a train wreck. And we were kind of trying to figure out why in the world she wasn't thinking or drinking better the night before. And that inspired our first product, Velo Vodka. So we created a vodka that's cleaner, fresher, and really geared towards, helping you drink smarter, essentially. So that's really where the project came along, the idea came along. It was so exciting. It got such amazing reception from family and friends. There was really an opportunity and white space in the marketplace, and it was irresistible not to go forward with it. So we're about 2 years into it now, and it's going fabulously.
And where can we find Velo Vodka?
So right now we're just in Massachusetts. However, we're expanding into Rhode Island tomorrow, and New Hampshire will follow soon. So we're hoping by next year we'll start seeing Connecticut, New York, etc. So we're in high growth mode at the moment, which is very exciting.
I feel like this is a Shark Tank product. I feel like that, Lori or Mr. Wonderful would invest in this.
You never know. That would absolutely be wonderful if they would.
I watch that every night, so I think you'd be a perfect person to be on that. Kristen, let's talk a little bit about your path.
Yeah, sure. So I was a media professional for almost 30 years and found myself winding down my publishing career when I was turning 50. Who the hell wanted to be in a dying industry of print magazines while turning 50? So I pivoted to go and work in the influencer tech space and was brought on as a CEO, a traditional media background, to take a company public, which I did. And then once that all happened, I was left on the sidelines holding the proverbial bag of I'm too old, SHIT. And the young boys took off and left me. And I did quite well with the stock package. So I said, you know what? I'm turning 53 then. I have an 11-year-old daughter. I want to do things my way. And I decided to raise up a company called Raise Her, really aimed at bringing the women that I've worked with over my career and all the many founders, Colleen, I met through the organization, other women founders geared around raising each other up. And instead of throwing elbows to one another, embracing one another and creating a community where we say yes to one another for collaboration, etc. So I boldly did that. I have spent almost every single cent I've had, but we're doing it. And that was last November. And we are up to over 72 paid members. And we are doing quite well with some mission-driven work on the influencer side as well. So basically, just trying to stay alive in our industry as an aging woman. It's never easy. So just trying to kind of keep moving and evolving.
So Laura, I know you can relate to a lot of what Kristen just said. Why don't you share your rise to starting your own company?
Absolutely. And by the way, both of you, amazing stories. Kristen, I share a similar one with you because I was on the other side of the business. I was on the sales side and I was running 2 sales teams at AOL. And I ran the Southeast and then I built the mid-market team for the company and then lost my job in 2008. So bad recession before #MeToo. And I was working in different startups here and there. And then I got a call. And the call was, would you ever think of recruiting? And I had always been in corporate America. I thought I was a corporate America person. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. And well, I have to tell you, I fell in love with it. It allowed me to stay in the industry I was passionate about, right? That's a key thing for us sometimes because, Colleen, unlike you, I loved my job, right? I thrived by helping people, right? My companies and clients I worked with, amazing people. So as it turned out, in 2015, so that was 2010, in 2015, I decided I wanted to build a larger sustainable firm, not just this little boutique firm. And so what I realized is we were just going to repeat the secret sauce. And the secret sauce was find more people like me who, as women, wanted to have their own control of their own lives, right? And maybe they're at the back half of their career, or perhaps they want to be closer to their kids and not have commuting time, et cetera. And so we built this company mostly around females. And I have to tell you, it's been incredible because it doesn't matter where they were on the agency side, on the sales side, or what their function was, they knew all of these jobs. And so it was a differentiator.
And so what I'm hearing are common themes and consistencies. At one, I wanted to align to something that I was passionate about. So Colleen wasn't passionate about what she was doing. The money was good, but found something that she really got excited about. Kristen, same thing. Laura, same thing. I'm in the same boat. I did the same thing. I didn't want to leave the industry, but I just didn't want to keep doing what I was doing. And for me, coming to the IAB, I tell people all the time, this is the best job I've ever had. I love it because you're right in the middle of everything, and it's actually okay to be older. I totally understand that. I was interviewing at several companies that are member companies of ours, and honestly, the person I'm interviewing with could have been my daughter, and no joke. And I was okay with it, but I think they weren't okay with me. They were like, wow, you've got a lot of experience, as if that's a bad thing. So I totally hear everything everyone's saying. So I guess the question is, if the company you were working for did things differently, or let's say if banking were more, because I hear this about banking a lot, that it's definitely just not a great place for women. What can they be doing differently? How can they get it right in a way that you would have maybe found more satisfaction working in that space? I'm talking to you, Colleen, obviously, about this. What do you think?
For me personally, I've always had this entrepreneurship craving. Kind of started selling Avon when I was 11, which is ironic now at 53. So, I think having staying might have been having more freedom to do other entrepreneurial projects and kind of explore that piece of my life, but was a single mother since my children were 1 and 3 and spent most of my career in banking during that period. So it was really kind of what you talked about before, is that how do you balance the work and the children, and then say a third project or a fourth project, to be able to go kind of explore something for yourself. And that just was, that might have been the key, but, trying to find balance, adding a third layer of another company on top of a career that's pretty demanding, and children that need a lot of attention at a young age was really tricky. So, the companies I did work for were great and wonderful, but for me personally, I was very happy to get out and very happy to be doing what I'm doing. Like every day is I don't work for a living. I have fun every day, and have like very exciting, exciting experience every day, and get to like work with people I'm interested, get to interact with people that are interested. So very, very blessed in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And Kristen, what are you finding in the women that are joining your network? Are they they're entrepreneurs, right? They all own their own business. What do you see?
Most of them, however, what has happened recently are some corporate clients. One was a male construction company, a big firm, an architect firm, who needed diversity, equity, and inclusion programming to keep women that are working for them engaged in the culture that they have, which is predominantly male. So I feel extremely excited about the opportunities that companies are looking for, ways to keep women employed, and that we might potentially fill a need for that corporate culture that might not have the money internally to program that, to keep people engaged and excited, but a peer group of women that can connect across industries. So I feel like that is sort of what's missing, is if you work in an industry like building or construction, or even, my industry, which back in the day was predominantly male, if you can create a community across different industries of like-minded women, that could be enough for them to stay engaged and feel appreciated. It also provides for some of the men to understand how women think and work and collaborate naturally without it being this sort of bravado that, oh, geez, that's a woman speaking up. Hearing how women talk with one another, hearing how we just listen for, oh yeah, that makes sense. How could we work on it this way? So creating, I think, just opportunities for people to collaborate across industries, but for men in male-dominated industries, maybe understanding how women think and work outside of their particular industry.
So some kind of working group for men to better understand women.
A little bit. I mean, I'm iterating as I go,
Yeah.
So I've got this business and I'm finding and unearthing these needs within companies that are trying to find ways to keep women to stay on board and not leave. Well, how do you do that? You be more flexible. You
Yeah.
understand what it's like to be a working mom or a single mom. So I think, providing people with different perspectives is, maybe part of what needs to happen, and not have a group of all men sitting at the C-suite table making those decisions that aren't maybe good for women.
Yeah, one thing I thought about was like a light bulb going off. We did employee surveys a couple years in a row, pre-COVID even, and now. And the women were significantly harsher about everything. Would you recommend the company? Do you see a future for yourselves here? We saw a big difference consistently between the men and the women. So I started a Women at IAB group just to give them an opportunity, like, tell me why, what do you think? And go over some of the results and see. Then all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went off, and I went, wait a minute, this is not an IAB issue. I bet this is true if you went to any company out there and asked the same kind of questions, you would see the same kind of differences. And it hit me because we are still living in a male-oriented construct of how work should be. You come to an office, you're here at 9, even though we still have we have 2 days in, 3 days off, we're still structured like a 9 to 5, even if it was work at home. You're on Zoom, people can schedule from 9 to 5 o'clock, and these are the calls you're supposed to be at. The construct was created by men for men when they went to work in the morning and came home at night and dinner was on the table, and we've been living with that same construct for decades. And now what I'm seeing is that doesn't work for a lot of the younger men either. They're like, hey, wait a minute, why do I have to be in the office at 9 o'clock? And you know what? I'm happy to go do this with my kid and get back on at 8 o'clock at night if I have to. So Laura, tell me a little bit about how you're seeing, you work with all these companies, you're out there trying to help staff and giving companies advice on how to attract and retain talent. What do you tell them, and what are you seeing?
Well, I want to say that I've seen a lot of progress. And Kristen, it's great to hear that you have men that are CEOs, founders, et cetera, reaching out saying, and particularly think about the construction industry, right? And by the way, startups typically in our digital space have been male founded, and that created a lot of, heavy companies, heavy male skewed, because founders hire their friends, and we all hear these things. But in an industry like construction, I have seen exactly what you said. I've seen more men wanting to learn more, to be able to be better supportive of their organizations, right? And that really has only happened over the last really 5-6 years.
Do you think
Right?
these resource groups help? Do resource groups make a difference? Do they help?
They do. They do. And in fact, it's interesting because women are naturally stronger in supporting younger people coming up, wanting to, they're more likely to be the mentor than men are, right? I think you've probably seen that throughout your career, but even in some studies that you've done. So I think what's important is that we look at this and we say, we can't put everything one size fits all. I will say that there has been improvement. Most companies that we work with, they do want to have that female voice. They want that female voice to be in the organization at all levels. The challenge becomes, how do they keep women, right? And one of the ways in which they do that is to create that community, to take the resource group or community group, so that information bubbles up, right? It's incumbent on women to also ask for what they need. I don't know, we're strong women, or we wouldn't have risked what we have financially, right, to build our businesses. And when you're younger, you have a little bit more fear around that. So I think the big thing is they have to be fully safe, giving their opinion of things that would improve. And I think bubbling that up is important.
Yeah.
Because CEOs, it might not bubble up to the particular hiring manager, but the CEO or the chief people officer, they want to know that their culture is being supportive of females. And by the way, that might mean you have to let them know that you may need something a little different than what their structure is. That's okay.
Yeah, I thought about, oh, go ahead, Kristen.
I was going to say, so just going back to the construction client, only 6% of women who work in, there are only 6% women working in construction in building. And we're what, 56% of the workforce? It varies, right? So they're recognizing that they're leaving such a talent pool on the table by not welcoming these women in. So it took a very smart CEO male to say, Kristen, how do you help me become the #1 construction building company in the country for women to work at? I sat and drank whiskey with him to get to that point, and that was so important to him. But it's all about the numbers, right? It's about, geez, look at how many people we're leaving on the table that are great employees that aren't coming to work in our industry because we're not talking to them.
Yeah.
So I do think data and getting to the top person and then creating a culture where that does bubble up is so important.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was going to ask Colleen, the liquor business has been known, not the wine business, the liquor business has been known as being a male dominated business.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it definitely is. And definitely, I feel like I've always worked in kind of male dominated businesses. I did pharmaceuticals in the beginning of my career. Banking was absolutely male dominated, and the liquor business probably even more so. But I don't know. I've always found men easy. So
Well,
Me too.
I love men. Like I find them, I don't know if it's my approach that they're just super easy, and I just tend to be able to get what I need.
It's very funny because I feel the same way. I think we're at a different point now. I used to say we would have had a female president a long, long time ago.
Yeah, you know what? If women, I think two things here. One, older women especially need to support women. You know, when I look back, like when Hillary Clinton ran, and this is not a political discussion here, but it was a lot of older women that did not support her. You know, it's having trust and confidence in women and supporting women. I think that's number one. And I think two, I think I see it, a lot of the younger women especially are intimidated when they're in a room with a lot of men. None of us are intimidated by men. I grew up with 3 brothers. I'm very comfortable. I don't even think about gender. I just speak what's on my mind, and I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I don't have a problem with that. But not everyone's grown up with 3 brothers or has spent years working in a male dominated thing. And I see it here, they get very quiet. And I've been out to dinner a few times with a table, like at our tech lab teams, for example, all men. And they talk louder and they're bigger, and I'm squished like this. And they're out, totally different type of conversation. And I find that I even have to dial it up when I'm sitting at the table with them to be heard. So I think women need to learn to not hold back. And clearly we have, you know, a team of women here that know how to do that. But we got to get younger generations, or even all women, to feel more confident about that. Kristen, do you offer training like that for your members? Is that the kind of thing you focus on?
Yeah, so what we try to do is create events where we feature an author or a maker. You know, we've had Colleen, we've had other whiskey makers, people that are in the industry, and we create an opportunity for them to talk to one another so that you've got the mentor and the mentee kind of natural, organic space. We do offer coaching as well, but I don't really want to get into that. I really want this to be, you know, a sort of every woman's version of Chief, if you will, where we're all supporting each other. We're all understanding the importance of collaboration and mentoring. We can do that type of training, but I think there's other people that do that stuff better. Yeah. I want to actually show the success of the women founders, the success of women making it in male dominated industries, have them tell their stories and making those folks approachable to
Mhm.
our members so that they get the courage and they can see, wow, look what it took for this woman to get through and how she did it. It's not impossible. Oh, there's another one over here. And they
Right.
all have access to one another. So instead of me doing all the talking,
Sure.
it's them talking amongst the member peer group. And I think that's so much more powerful.
Totally.
There's also
totally
been a
agree.
shift, right? So a lot of young women, there's been this shift. Women are great at creator content people, right? Women as creators, it's like meant to be. They they're good at storytelling. And then you think about what social media, right, has allowed. And so Cheryl and I spoke about this, and I said to Cheryl, you do realize in today's world, more women are graduating from college than men. All right. But where are we losing a lot of those women? And so I can't speak to the liquor business. I wish I could, but I can speak to the media marketing business. And we're losing females graduating into media marketing. We're losing them to early entrepreneurship. I mean, right out. They begin doing their own social media companies and they pick up, let's say, one real estate company, and then they get another real estate company. And they grew up with the technology and they have the presence, which I think is really important. I think the young women today are much more, their presence is stronger than years ago. And I think a lot of that is because of social media, because think about how they've always had video for the most part, right? And phones with video. And because of that, their presence, they've always paid attention to that. And
What's interesting, Laura, is their presence on camera. Yes.
on
Very
camera.
comfortable. It's almost like acting. They can turn it on, get in front of the camera, be a star, put them in a room where they have to talk to other people. Not
right.
always so much. And,
Crazy.
not so much.
And
But
mentoring.
right, but we are hearing young people say, when you say, what do you want to be when you grow up? A TikToker. I want to do YouTube videos, like they're seeing this as a great way to make a living. I mean, it's very interesting what's happening there. So even at a young age, they're not considering going to some kind of work environment where they've got to be somewhere at a certain time. So I feel like flexibility is going to be the thing, period. Because that's, we all needed and wanted that. Working moms, single moms, but I think every male, female, doesn't matter, coming up are saying, I don't want to, the choices they want to make. They want purpose. They want to align to something that's meaningful. I think things that we all figured out when we were in our 50s, 40s, 50s, because suddenly the stuff we were doing to kind of make a living. And I'm like you, I loved my career. It was always so much fun. We worked together at AOL, and I worked at so much fun. But there does come a point where you're like kind of aging out, and it's like, okay, what next? What do I do next? And that's when I know we've all come to that realization. I want something with purpose and meaning. Well, they're starting out like that now. I didn't start out like that. I was like, I want something that's going to pay me well, that's an interesting career, and is not the same.
Well, I read something today about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step over.
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
I read something today and it blew my mind, but I thought it was interesting. 32% of Gen Z plans to live at home forever. My mother and my father kicked my ass out the door because I was a pain in the neck. By the time I was 18, I never went home. I never looked back. We wanted our independence. Kids now are, oh, I can live at home. I can stay on my parents' cell phone plan till I'm 30. I can stay on my parents' insurance. It's a very different culture. The need for them to go out on their own is very different. Yeah. There's some good to that too, because I'm actually in Greece right now, and the multi-generational living together, and my dad lives on property with me. There's not a day that's gone by that my daughter hasn't been with her grandfather. There's something to be said for all of that. So maybe there is this kind of shift, and okay, you don't need to go out and work on your own and get married at 27 and buy your first house at 28 and have your first kid and become a publisher, blah, blah, blah. They don't have those same demands financially that we did. because it's a whole different set of what's important to them and how they view things, and parents take care of their kids longer. So I just wonder if out of necessity we were that way,
I think you make
and
an
out of
excellent point.
lack of necessity, the
Yeah.
kids are the way they are
Parents
now.
are so involved in their kids' lives. It's crazy. Colleen,
Yeah.
you were going to say something, Colleen?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Kristen's saying, and that's what I was going to say. I look at my mother's generation, and I kind of joke at 53. I'm kind of like the last generation that would even think they need a man. You know what I mean? Like, I've never needed a man. I kind of tease like my boyfriend. I'm like, you're like a luxury item. Like, I love my Louis Vuitton bag or my Hermes, whatever. I go, but I don't need one. I can shop at Marshall's all day long. So I think like coming down from our mothers was this: you had to work, you had to find a man, you had to do this, you had to have kids. The dynamics changed, and now I have a 23 and a 25-year-old, and their thought process is completely different.
Right.
They've been raised by a single mother, so my son is totally like expects women to be like me. He wouldn't know what to do with a woman that was like needy and demanding and all that stuff. You know what I mean? And I feel like even when I talk to younger guys, say in their 20s or 30s, a lot of them have been raised by single mothers. They have like this different perspective on women in a great way. You know what I mean? Because they're equals. Their mothers, the single mothers they were raised by, did everything for them. So it's kind of like you were mother and father. And you don't have to, you know what I mean? The norms are gone.
Yeah, or at least
I believe.
at least a working mom, at least a working mom. Like
Right.
my
Yes.
mom was a stay-home mom. So different dynamic.
That's right.
Go
And
ahead.
I had the stay-at-home mom also, and my dad was a very high up at Mattel Toys. So you can imagine the stay-at-home mom. And out comes this outspoken young lady, of which I was told how many times when I was young, you're supposed to be demure, a word I don't like, demure. But my father brought out that in me. He brought out my ability to speak and hold the conversations at different levels as a child, right? And I think moms now also raise their sons very differently. Moms don't say, oh, the boy doesn't do the vacuuming or etc. Most moms are like, you're just like your sister, go, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
I think what changed in the world, though, I'm 61, so I'm ahead of each one of you. And what really changed now is that women are open to many different opportunities where previously women were going to be school teachers. Let's all go along with what we would have done, right? And corporate America was a little shocked in really the 80s and 90s. So now we fast forward, it's 2022. And these companies look and they know what they need to do and they want to do the right things. But we just need to make it each industry, not just the media industry, they need to make it appealing to women to want to come into the industry.
Yeah.
And I think we don't necessarily always do that, particularly when you are not Fortune 500 enterprise companies.
Yeah. And I think that to do that, first of all, they need to see women throughout the org, right? So, I mean, I think it starts there. And they need to have a welcoming environment where if they have something to say, whoever's leading the meeting paves the way to allow them to say something. So I think, all of this is consciousness, and it's a little bit of training and making people, giving them little tips on things they could do to make it a more inclusive work environment. But anyway, we are out of time, but I do want to do one last quick. I know that often people say the best thing that ever happened to them is they got fired because it forced them to reevaluate, take a look, and pivot into something new. If you were to thank somebody or some situation for helping you get to where you are today, who would you thank? And I'm happy to kick it off while you all think about it. So for me, it was one company that I was running a sales team. It was a big company. I don't want to mention names because they're all members of mine now and I love them all. But we had a massive layoff. I was part of the layoff, and I found myself 50-something-year-old woman out there trying to make it a go, and went, ridiculous, not going to happen. And it forced me to think about, what am I good at? What do I love doing? What would be a great job? And that led me into training and development. And that ultimately was one of the reasons why I came to the IAB, because that background, and it actually gave me more fabric in my background. You know, I wasn't just coming at it from years and years of doing this. I now also had this under my belt, which gave me, I think, made me an even more interesting candidate for the role that I have. Anyway, Laura, I'll go to you.
So interesting, it's actually two men. At AOL, I worked for Michael Barrett, who's now the CEO of Magnite, and Mike Kelly, who was the founder of Entertainment Weekly, president of AOL Media Networks, and then CEO of Weather. And I actually pulled Mike aside. Michael knows how I feel about him because I sent an email when he left AOL. But I went and met with Mike Kelly and I thanked him. He said, "What can I do for you today?" And this is 2018. And I looked at him, I said, "Nothing. I came to thank you. If you and Michael had not given me the opportunity to basically start the AOL Atlanta office and then build the mid-market team, I would never be capable of being a CEO, even of this small company, because I wasn't in banking, Colleen. So you can imagine the sales side of me needed to understand P&Ls, right? They saw the talent that I had, and they gave me the resources I needed to learn to be able to make the best decisions. Yeah. So I do tell both of them that a lot. I thank them for it. And interestingly enough, Mike Kelly and his advisory firm, K&A, are a big part of my organization in terms of my being mentored and advised by them. So
two great men. I've worked for both as well.
Incredible. And both of them have always supported and promoted women.
Yes, that is very true. All right, Colleen, quick, and Kristen, quick. Sorry to do this too, but we are way over time.
No, Laura's story is great. Absolutely. I kind of tease that would be my ex-husband, because I really got the rug pulled out of me under my feet when my kids were 1 and 3, and it really had to make me kind of stand up and deliver. And I did it, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without it. And I'm proud of what I've accomplished. And believe me, the hardships teach you the most. And now I feel like at this age, I know when something's hard, something good is coming right behind it. So it really gives me a great sense of confidence and happiness.
That's awesome. Kristen, bring us
up. I alluded to mine at the front end of this story, so I'll just tell it quickly. Taking a company and ushering it through, an acquisition was incredible experience for me. It was a really I had the rug pulled out from underneath me too, but in the end, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because if I wasn't pushed, I wouldn't have jumped. So I pushed and I survived, and I pulled the parachute string, and I'm doing it. So thank them.
This was I knew this would be a great conversation, and it did not disappoint. I want to thank you all, Kristen, Colleen, Laura. This was a fabulous discussion. Thank you for joining me today. Women are doing it for themselves. I love it. I am Cheryl Goldstein. Thanks for watching.